Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Coming up on the show today, IMF sees strong economic benefits for removing vaccine barriers by 2025. African Airline Association and Airport Council International Africa, ACI Africa, sign agreements to support African air transport industry. And IFC and Ghana's SEC partner to develop green bonds market. It's the last show for the week, and we begin with intraday market numbers in Africa, which were in the green. The JSE in South Africa jumped 1.1%, while the NGX index rose 0.02%. The markets in Egypt closed for the week positive on Thursday by 0.72%. Kenya ended Thursday's session positive. And in the Middle East, markets in the Gulf region ended the week mixed on Thursday. In the UAE, the Abu Dhabi index led the gains by 0.59%, while Dubai's index followed closely with a 0.52% gain. On the flip side, the market in Saudi Arabia closed negative for the week by 0.23%, while the Qatari market closed marginally lower by 0.01%. We go to Europe now, where the market advanced cautiously on Friday as global stocks eyed a positive week amid surging commodity prices, while investors digested a round of earnings and await a key jobs report out of the United States. Well, let's cross over now to Frankfurt, where Chelsea Dulani is standing by to tell us more. Hello, Chelsea. Good afternoon. German exports rose 1.2% in March despite ongoing coronavirus restrictions. Was this growth expected?
Well, this report was actually quite a bit better than economists had been expecting. The 1.2% growth in exports compared to a month earlier was actually about twice as much as the market had been forecasting. So we are continuing to see the German export sector really benefit, in particular from the growth in the Chinese economy, but also the growth in the U.S. economy, the rebound there as the economy starts to reopen. We saw German exports to the U.S. rise by about 17% in March compared to February. We also did see today data out from China showing another strong month of exports for them as well. So in their April period, they saw exports rise by about 9.5% compared to the previous quarter. They also saw imports continue to stay strong. So these are two strong reports from two of the world's most important economies.
And a slew of earnings out today from top German companies, including BMW. Walk us through these reports.
Well, I'd say the reports from Adidas and BMW actually showed quite similar trends. Adidas reported a very strong recovery in the first quarter, driven mostly by China. So sales to China were up about 150% compared to the previous quarter, when, of course, there were still a lot of COVID restrictions in China that had really impacted sales there. But clearly, that is emerging as a very strong market for the sports apparel retailer. They've also seen growth, particularly in online sales, that continues to be a trend. But they do continue to see weakness here in Europe as stores really remain closed in a lot of countries because of the coronavirus restrictions. BMW reporting quite a similar story, where the Chinese market really helped drive growth for them in the first quarter and help offset a lot of weakness here in Europe as these restrictions remain in place. We also did see a report today from Siemens, the industrial giant. They also reported much better than expected results and said they expect their earnings for the year to be quite a bit better than expected. So this is a positive sign sort of for the industrial sector, given that Siemens makes a lot of different industrial products and is a bit of a bellwether for the industry.
And Germany's health minister said that the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic has been broken. What does this mean for the economy?
Well, the hope, of course, is that this will allow for a quick reopening of businesses around the country. Germany has been under various forms of coronavirus restrictions since November, so a lot of businesses haven't had really any business since for the past 6 months. Has been very devastating, particularly for a lot of restaurants, bars, retail stores. So now that we are starting to see this third wave come under control, the calls are really growing louder to reopen businesses. We've already seen some states that have very low infection rates make moves to reopen. Bavaria, for example, says that they plan to open outdoor dining again starting on May 10th, so next week. And they also plan to restart tourism, so allowing tourism businesses to open, allowing hotels to accept visitors again a little bit later in the month. Other states as well, like Lower Saxony, which also have low rates, also have laid out plans to reopen. But there is, of course, still a note of caution from a lot of health officials here, even Jens Spahn, when saying that he does think that this third wave is under control, is warning against opening too quickly and allowing for another resurgence in the virus.
All right, we hope not to see that. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea, and enjoy your weekend. Well, we now move to the UK, where Juliana is waiting in our studio to bring us up to speed with the latest developments. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon. Thank God it's Friday.
TGIF, Finny.
Yes. So International Airlines Group has reported a £1.2 billion pre-tax loss for the first quarter and reiterated the need for the rollout of digital vaccine passports to enable the industry get passengers back to the skies. What's the latest talk about the digital vaccine passports?
Gosh, well, it's up in the air. There's so many different elements to this story. First of all, people in Britain, holiday makers, or those hoping to get some sun in the next couple of months, have been waiting and anticipating an update today from the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, who is supposed to be telling us what happens on the 17th of May when it goes from being illegal to travel out of the UK for leisure to this traffic light system. We're expecting an update. That hasn't come. There's lots of domestic stories today, so perhaps that will be pushed to next week. But we do know that earlier in the week, on Tuesday, I believe, G20 foreign ministers met up. Transport ministers met up to discuss how they're going to start opening up travel and leisure. We know the travel and leisure industry has lost trillions due to COVID restrictions, and millions of jobs have also been lost around the world. According to Bloomberg, they saw some information at the end of that meeting. They put their back in on this vaccine passport. We know Joe Biden hasn't really been a fan of it, but this is one way that you can open up a travel corridor. Going back to International Consolidated Airlines, yes, they're the parent company of BA, Iberia, Aer Lingus and others, and they have reported this operating loss for the first 3 months of the year of over 1.1 billion euros. Massive loss for them. No surprises really, because we know that at the beginning of the year, airports were basically shut due to this third surge that was creeping across the world. He's the chief executive of IAG, have asked the rest of the world to get their acts together so you can get people flying again, because there are so many losses. They said for Q2 they're going to be flying about 25% of their fleet, but until we start hearing these updates, we don't know. We are starting to see, though, Innie, within the Asia Pacific region, like Hong Kong, Singapore, that corridor has opened up. Australia have opened up a corridor with New Zealand. There are some talks that potentially policymakers in London and Washington could perhaps open up a corridor between the UK and the US. That would be massive for corporate travel, which does rack up to about a third of airlines' revenue.
Yeah, and the FTSE 100 is at a new 14-month high today. Does this have anything to do with the Bank of England's decision yesterday?
Yes and no. Certainly sterling has risen today off the back of that pretty positive outlook coming out of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting yesterday, showing that they expect GDP this year for the UK to go up to 7.25%. If that does indeed happen, this is the biggest year of growth, or the biggest bounce back since peacetime. But whilst you were talking to Chelsea in Frankfurt, I did have a little peek at my phone, and we have had that US job market non-farm roll data come in, and it's pretty shocking. We were expecting them to add up to 1 million jobs this on the month of April. It's now at 266,000 jobs, which is well below estimates. Also, economists were expecting the US unemployment data to drop from 6% to 5.8%. It's actually gone up to 6.1%. Now, this has significant implications. A lot of people were a little bit scared that the economy, the global economy, could be overheating. Of course, there is a Goldilocks saying, you know, a lot of these investors don't like it to be too hot or too cold. They like it to be just about right. Not sure how the FTSE is going to be changed in a live update, but I do have the data here at the moment. The FTSE All Share is up, last time we checked, by 0.79%. The FTSE 100 up by 0.72%, and the FTSE 250 up by 0.97%. In the currencies market, the British pound up on the US dollar by 0.16%, up on the euro by 0.09%, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.22%. Before we move on, Innie, very important to mention one of the other reasons why the FTSE is in positive territory is because we have had the most significant local elections in the UK for about 50 years. Boris Johnson had a lot of controversy over the past couple of months, all linked to that Greensill scandal. He has done significantly well. All of the final Labour heartlands, some of these heartlands hadn't voted Conservative in over 100 years. He's won them, and we are still waiting for the London mayoral election. Lots to get through, but worth an update.
Yes. Well, after 3 years, activist Brampton has abandoned the tussle with Barclays. This is after a 3-year effort to overhaul the British bank. Why now?
Yeah, really interesting story, actually. Edward Brampton, he is a kind of activist, investor, pretty wealthy, pretty influential. His company owned 6.01% of Barclays shares. Over the past couple of years, he's had various issues with Barclays that he's been raising the red flag over, trying to get investor support. He recently started going on about Jes Staley. He's the chief executive of Barclays, who, unfortunately for him, has got ties to the now deceased convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Pretty controversial, I believe. At the time, he did release a statement. That wasn't good enough for Brampton. He tried to get him fired, but he didn't get the support from shareholders. So they announced this morning that they had sold all their stock. So I'm sure Staley will be breathing a huge sigh of relief.
All right. Thank you so much, Juliana. And, well, thank God it's Friday once again. Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Thanks, Innie.
So we move over now. Asia-Pacific markets traded mixed on Friday, with some indexes shedding gains ahead of the U.S. jobs reports. Like Juliana told us about some of the figures out there that obviously has provided indication of what the Fed could do next. Japan's Nikkei 225 gave up most of its gains to close 0.09% higher at 29,357.82. The Topix index added 0.29% to 1,933.05. In South Korea, the Kospi advanced 0.58% to 3,197.20. While in Australia, the benchmark ASX 200 gained 0.27% to 7,080.80 as major banks and miners rose. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gave up earlier gains to close down at 0.09% at 28,610.65. The Chinese mainland shares were not able to hold on to earlier gains as the Shanghai Composite closed down 0.65% at 3,418.87, while the Shenzhen component lost 1.95% to 13,933.81. Friday's session followed overnight moves on Wall Street, where major U.S. indexes advanced following a better-than-expected reading on jobless claims. We'll now take a break now. When we come back, more stories on Business Incorporated. Stay with us. You're welcome back. We now go to South Africa, and we're looking at the decision by the African National Congress to suspend the Secretary General Ace Magashule after being charged with embezzling public funds while he was Premier of the Free State Province. However, the Secretary General has refused to comply with his suspension and has denied charges. What will this mean for the future of ANC? What will it mean for the fight against corruption? And what will it mean for the outlook of the economy? Matt Kindiga, an Associate Practice Lead for Sub-Saharan Africa at FrontView, joins us to provide answers to this. Hello, Matt. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Yeah, so what does this dispute between Ace Magashule reveal about the state of ANC?
So yes, it's a really interesting development, and this is mainly because it illustrates the sort of ongoing power struggle between pro-Zuma and pro-Ramaphosa factions within the ruling ANC party in South Africa. So as we know, Mr. Ramaphosa was elected as president of the ANC and of the country in 2017 with a razor-thin margin. But there was a lot of optimism around his ability to change the way the country was governed. But since then, because his support base his victory was so thin, he's really struggled to forge a path between maintaining support from pro-Zuma camps and pushing ahead with pro-business policies and more liberal policies that he intended to bring forwards when he became president. So this recent development is quite a victory for Mr. Ramaphosa and his supporters. It does mean that he probably can push ahead with some more difficult anti-corruption initiatives. And it really represents a bit of a key moment for the ANC as well, because it looks like things may be tipping in Mr. Ramaphosa's favor for the time being.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, the fight against corruption is a major discussion coming from this. So have the president for some time now, the allegations of worsening corruption in the country have been present. What does this represent, or does it represent a turning point for governance standards in the country?
So broadly, I would say, yes, it probably does represent some kind of turning point for the country overall. So just last week, Mr. Ramaphosa admitted that the ANC presided over almost a decade of systematic looting of state-owned organizations and state-owned enterprises and government organizations and departments. And so I think the signals are now becoming apparent, or the signals are showing that we are seeing a bit of a shift in the government's priorities towards more anti-corruption initiatives. But it's also worth noting the scale of the problem in South Africa. So South Africa needs a very large range of pro-business policies to be implemented in order to kickstart the economy. It needs a top-down approach to tackling corruption and cleaning up the way government departments are run. And this will involve ruffling a lot of feathers, upsetting a lot of people in power. And so we expect this process to be quite painfully slow and take a very long time. So in summary, yes, it's a positive development, but we think things are going to move very, very slowly in terms of tackling corruption and improving governance.
So, but what does it mean for businesses in South Africa at this time?
Yes, so I mean, not a lot in the short term. It probably will support investor sentiment in the longer term, but really we need to see faster action from the president in terms of consolidating his improved power base, implementing more pro-business policies, tackling meaningful steps in tackling corruption. But businesses will still have to be contending with other issues at the moment. So that includes power shortages, a very depressed tourism sector, very weak public finances. And so these things will really counter the sort of positive effects of these recent developments within the ANC.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing your thoughts with us on happenings in South Africa. Enjoy your weekend. Matt Kindiga is Associate Practice Lead, SSA, in FrontView.
Thanks.
Well, moving on now, the International Monetary Fund says strong economic argument for removing barriers to vaccine production and distribution, while cautioning that a waiver on intellectual property protections must be accompanied by other measures. According to the managing director of IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, a temporary suspension for rules at the World Trade Organization must be paired with both a transparent process for allocating doses and anti-counterfeiting measures, as scaling up production is the fastest way to bring an end to the crisis. Mr. Georgieva says the IMF expects a $9 trillion benefit to the world economy through 2025 if faster progress can be made in ending the crisis. And the African Airline Association and Airport Council International Africa have signed a memorandum of understanding to support the development of the air transport industry in Africa through collaborative actions to address safe, secure, seamless, environmentally friendly and affordable air travel, among others. Under the MOU, both agencies will work jointly on the promotion and sharing of best practices to foster constructive engagement between airport operations and air carriers. The agreement also includes safety enhancement initiatives in line with the Abuja safety targets, promotion and implementation of new technologies in air travel, as well as data and intelligence sharing versus affordable airfares in Africa using a holistic approach for the reduction of the cost of air travel. And in Ghana, the International Finance Corporation and the Securities and Exchange Commission in the country have partnered to facilitate investment in projects that address climate and environmental issues through green bonds. The agreement will see the IFC help the SEC develop guidelines for issuers and investors for green bonds in Ghana. In a statement, the Director General of the SEC says the introduction of green bonds will give investors opportunities to finance green buildings, clean transportation, renewable energy, sustainable water and management, and other climate-friendly projects. The partnership will enable the Commission develop a comprehensive reference guide appropriate for the Ghanaian market, as green bonds will support Ghana's transition to lower carbon future as specified in the country's agreed contributions under the Paris Agreement. And that's it on the program for today and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ini John McQuarrie.